This computer. All right. Okay, welcome everybody to the Boyd Acres Neighborhood Association meeting. Today for a special guest, we have Jason Wick from Avion Water, and he's going to give us the water talk. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask him questions, and we have them for 30 to 45 minutes or however long. We probably won't go beyond 45. So feel free to give him questions at the end of his talk. And you can either use the chat box at the bottom. If we have too many people, the chat box sometimes works better. Otherwise, just raise your hand and unmute yourself. So I would ask you to all mute yourself while he's speaking and then unmute yourself when you have a question. All right, so let's all give a hand to Jason. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Let's, as background, we moved here to Bend in 1971. I graduated high school from Mountain View, went through kindergarten, through all the schools with pretty much the same crowd of people because there was only about 12,000 people here then. My dad purchased Avion in 1987. That was the year I graduated high school. And we only had 2,000 customers. The first year, Dad made, I think it was like negative $200,000 because he was busy fixing up the company. And now we're up to close to serving over 15,000 accounts, which is close to 35,000 people. Avion is a privately held utility that is regulated by the Public Utility Commission. And so anything we charge has to be approved and justified. Now, on to water. Water in the West has always been a very complex issue. The first thing to know is water works on first in time, first in right, meaning when you get your water right, you get what's called a priority date. So if you come after me in line and get a water right, and the water starts to go away, the junior guy gets shut off first. And it's always been that way. There's a lot of problems with it, but we are in Central Oregon fairly lucky with the water situation we have here. Some places like Arizona, specifically Tucson, there's some interesting reads on how the water table there has dropped 800 feet. And for every 100 feet the water table declines, the land has been subsiding by a foot. So there's some places around the edges of Tucson where the land has dropped over 10 feet. The same thing's happening out near Las Vegas too, because climate change. But here in Central Oregon, we are lucky to have what we have. Now we need to separate groundwater from surface water. Surface water is what the irrigation companies use, and it is very dependent upon snowpack, how the snow melts, and what particular lawsuit is happening at that time, because there's surface water has been very litigious, to say the least. Groundwater, on the other hand, is much more steady. You see gentle rises and declines. You need to have a drought for about a decade to see the water table drop at all. So neglecting the surface water questions, I can answer those if you want. For groundwater, Avion uses completely groundwater. The water that's pulled out of the ground doesn't see the light of day until it comes to out of your faucets. We generally don't add any chemicals to it. It comes out fairly pure. And we don't have to chlorinate, which is great. People may be worried about the groundwater table because out near Rogers Road, which is right near your area, but it's across Highway 97, there's a perched aquifer, which is like you have the main water bearing level around 400 to 700 feet deep. The wells there were only 200 feet deep. So there was like an impermeable bowl where the water would collect. Now, too many people drilled into that aquifer and drained it. So it is no longer producing water. But that is expected because a perched aquifer only recharges from the area of water that drains into it, which is generally not very big in the grand scheme of things. So groundwater and the main water table has been fairly stable. All the groundwater users in the Deschutes Basin combined use about 72 cubic feet per second. Now, the water table recharges at 3,500 cubic feet per second, roughly. So, meaning that the recharge is not equaling the outflow. So, or we're not taking very much water out of the water table, very little for how big the aquifer is. The aquifer recharges so well because of all the fractured rock from the volcanoes. Now, there have been some studies on climate change, and the one prediction I read, which was from the USGS, a report by Marshall Gannett, stated that the water table should stay fairly stable even if the snow in the Cascades becomes rarer, because we're in the rain shadow of the Cascade Mountains, and that the water's still going to come out of the clouds from the valley side. And if it falls as rain, it still infiltrates through the soil, but it will cause a lot of problems for surface water irrigation. And a lot of people also don't realize that all the cities and everyone combined use about 4% of the water in the basin. All the rest is for ag and surface water. And they're trying to do a lot of things, lining canals to prevent the canal leakage, on-farm improvements. But generally, if you want to deal with the health of the middle reach of the Deschutes River, we deal with the irrigation companies and how they use their allotted water. That can get fairly complex. The oldest water right in the basin is Tumalo. The second oldest is Central Oregon Irrigation District. And I think it's Swally Irrigation after that, then Arnold Irrigation, and then North Unit. North Unit is the one that serves the farmers up in Madras, and it's the one that currently is having a lot of problems with the current rules for water with the state. But we can get into all that stuff, and I'm trying to cover a whole bunch of little topics here so everyone can ask questions on the area that interests them. But yeah, water's extremely political. As far as physical supply goes, we do not have a shortage here for groundwater users. That doesn't mean that it's going to change, especially with how fast people are moving here. And it means we probably need to look at what we want to irrigate and how we want to irrigate it. Currently, during the wintertime, Avion uses about 2.5 to 3 million gallons a day. And that tells you what the baseline is for people taking showers and cleaning up dishes and all that laundry. During the summertime, we use between 17 to 20 million gallons a day. All of that water, or most of it, is for irrigating yards and other various things. So you can see the huge difference in the usage that we see going towards surface water irrigation. However, if you want to conserve water, Avion makes up about 1% of the use in the basin. So you improve Avion's water use by 20%, you've now are at 99.8% water use. You don't make a lot of headway with that, with limiting surface or groundwater use. You're going to make most of your progress in the basin with surface water projects, I think. I've been trying to work with the Deschutes River Conservancy to figure out a way to fund river restoration projects, projects that benefit the health of the river. And that includes volume and temperature. Above Bend, the river flows at about 2,000 cubic feet per second. Below the river house, the river flows at about 150 cubic feet per second. When I was a kid growing up above Tumalo Park, the water moved, they only put about 50 cubic feet per second over into the river, so it was super low. They actually have enough water right to dry up the middle reach of the Deschutes. But as everyone realizes, that's probably not a good idea. But that's kind of a general outline for water. If you want a really good idea of water in the West, read a book called Cadillac Desert. And it has a lot of really good information about the history of irrigation in the West and in the world and how, well, kind of doomed it is. But it's great sort of information on what the general outlook in the West is. So that's a broad outline of a lot of different topics. And if anyone would like to ask a question, let me know. Anyone?
I'll start.
Okay.
Okay, so surface water and groundwater. So all of your clients use groundwater. So we're
That is
watering
correct.
our yards with groundwater. So
Yes.
does that mean Bend City Water, which uses Tumalo, they're using surface water?
They use half and half. During the wintertime, they use all surface water because they can use the gravity flow to charge the system, and that saves a lot on power. But during the summertime, much like us, they see a large increase in water use, and they use groundwater wells to make up the difference. So max capacity, they're probably half and half, maybe more now that we've grown so much or still growing.
Okay, so then along those same lines, all the canals, that's surface water
Yep.
because it's coming off the Deschutes. And those canals go to agriculture. Is that correct?
That used to be correct. When Bend grew in the 70s, it was a lot of sagebrush subdivisions. And like outlying subdivisions were right around Bear Creek and Pettigrew, which is not very far. I mean, that's town nowadays. But back in the 70s, that whole acreage was a farm that irrigated. So when they divided up the farm and sold it, they attached water rights to each parcel of land. So there are usage rate for Deschutes County and groundwater recharge rate. Okay, I forgot. That put me off. So where were we? I was reading the question.
Oh, Pettigrew.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of. We have about 600 customers that get about 5 gallons per minute through a flow control. So they use surface water too, but the water right is delivered to a Avion pond, and the water right is owned by Central Oregon Irrigation District. We're just the middleman. So the ownership of the water is between the client and COID, not Avion. Avion only pumps it to the houses. So that is not a very efficient use of surface water, but there's not a lot of they don't use a ton of water compared to farming and other uses that can be done more efficiently. And the chat question was, could I please repeat the groundwater usage rate for Deschutes County and groundwater recharge rate. Okay, well, it's not for Deschutes County, it's for the Deschutes Basin, which is different than a county. The basin includes Madras and various parts of Jefferson County, but the combined usage of all the people in the Deschutes Basin using groundwater use about 72 cubic feet per second. The groundwater recharge rate comes in about 3,500 cubic feet per second. And the best place to look that up is in a report by the USGS by a gentleman named Marshall Gannett, Gannett, I believe. And Marshall and a guy named Ken Light are sort of the experts on the Deschutes Basin, and they wrote a lot of reports regarding this. They've also stated that currently surface water or groundwater withdrawal has not made any difference, any measurable difference in flow in the lower Deschutes, which is where our groundwater comes out at. It's indistinguishable. Our usage is indistinguishable from any climate change. So, for example, the gauge below Round Butte Dam is only accurate to 200 CFS, 200 cubic feet per second. So even if we were affecting the lower Deschutes, you could not read it on a gauge. So currently groundwater, in my opinion, is the best way to go. And I'm kind of interested to see how the current water rights come out, because again, surface water, we're having problems, but groundwater's fine. And they're different. Several NGOs, non-governmental organizations who want to make big changes to water, hold the cities pretty much hostage over water rights and mitigation, even though we don't make up much use in the basin. But, you know, it's just politics and the way water works. So who has enough water rights to reduce the flow at Tumalo? Now, do you mean reduce the flow to Tumalo Reservoir or to the river down near Tumalo Irrigation District? I'm a little confused by the question.
Jason, that was my question. You were saying that the flow in the river is 2,000 cubic feet per second, and it used to be 150.
No, it flows at 2,000 cubic feet per second above the city of Bend. So south of Bend, the river's flowing about through the old mill district, about 2,000 cubic feet per second. At a river house, where there's a big dam that you can find, that's the main diversion. The river only flows at 150 cubic feet per second.
And that's because at that point, it's being diverted into the canals?
Yes.
Okay, and I thought you said at some point that some company has enough water rights to reduce that 150 to zero.
Oh, all the irrigation districts combined could dry up the Deschutes River, but they choose not to.
If they use their full water rights, that 150 could go to zero.
Yeah, it could, but they won't do that. I mean, the effect on tourism and the general burning in effigy that they would get would probably put them off of doing that.
Okay.
There's also a report. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Sure. The next one is from Kathy. It says, my report says my water has arsenic and chromium 6 in it. Do I need to worry? Now, this was a big deal a couple years ago. Chromium-6 is known as hexavalent chromium. And if you've seen the movie Aaron Brockovich, that's the chemical they're talking about. It occurs naturally here. It didn't come from any settlement ponds or anything. It probably comes from the volcanoes. But the level of chromium-6, no one has any information on, and it's pretty low comparatively. The only studies they have on humans are from a couple people in chromium mines in China who were exposed to levels that were ridiculous. Small amounts of hexavalent chromium can be or are generally transformed into chromium-3, which is a vitamin in your stomach, but no one has done any studies on it because the studying on humans is too dangerous. But the levels we have in this water in the basin have been here forever. And you think you would see a cancer cluster here in Central Oregon regarding stomach cancers and all the other things that are caused by large doses of hexavalent chromium. And you do not see that. The actual cancer rates in Central Oregon are lower than the national average. So I'm not a doctor. I know what I've read, and I would drink the water. I'm currently on city water, but I grew up on Avion, and I would feel safe with my child drinking the water, and my mom and my dad, and all you guys, obviously. Arsenic, the level's so low that it doesn't affect anything. So the EPA, just so everyone knows, the EPA regulates the chemicals that are in water, how many tests you have to take, and obviously the maximum contaminant levels. The maximum contaminant levels we don't exceed in anything. So the water, we haven't had to treat the water. And just so you know, the only way to treat the water for hexavalent chromium would be through a reverse osmosis process, which is about 80% efficient. So if you think Avion, just as a round number, if Avion used 20 million gallons a day, we would have, or if we used 18 million gallons a day, we'd have to pump about 20. 2 million of that would be considered hazardous waste. And so we would create 2 million gallons of hazardous waste, effectively concentrating the hexavalent chromium that we now have to do something with, where naturally it hasn't caused a problem. I have no idea how to scroll down. I think I've gotten all the questions that were typed currently. Oh, what water source do the golf courses use? Lost Tracks uses Avion Water Company, Avion Water. Pronghorn uses Avion Water because the water we serve out there, the water out in Pronghorn comes all the way from China Hat Road here. The other golf courses, I do not know. I know that River's Edge has an irrigation water right, and I don't know about any of the other courses.
There's another question here. It says, what are the projected growth rates for Avion?
Well, if I had that crystal ball, I'd be filthy rich. We are growing like crazy because as the city expands, it expands east and north. A lot of that's for traffic and sewer issues, and that's all in Avion service territory. Polish Homes is building a subdivision of 2,000 homes right off of right out near Mountain View High School, and there's various other projects. Brasada just put in for another 100 homes. It's really hard to keep up with how fast things are coming in. And, you know, it depends on so many factors I couldn't tell you. We're trying to prepare and go as fast as we can. We have enough water rights to serve a projected growth for probably the next 15 years. If in fact we reached a limit of those water rights, we have to stop serving new customers and only serve you guys. Once Avion takes on a customer, we're stuck with you.
Yay.
I know, I'm just kidding. And you're stuck with us unless you want to drill your own well, which you can do.
No, no, no. And I don't want water. I love Avion Water, the best.
Yeah. So in summary, Avion uses groundwater which is recharged very much faster than withdrawal into the Deschutes Basin. Is that correct? That is correct. When you normally turn on a well, for example, it's like a siphon. Normally, you get a cone. It's called a cone of depression. So when you start taking water out, the water dies down because it can't flow through the medium to stay flat. But here in Central Oregon, when you turn on a well, the water stays flat because the water-bearing layer is volcanic sands that transmits water very well. So yeah, we have seen water water levels drop in our wells that have been in the ground since the 60s.
Wow.
I've got a question, Jason. The biggest waste of stuff, since I used to live in Vegas, is irrigation of lawns and things. Is there any thought of Ben doing recycled, reclaimed water for irrigation?
Yeah, actually, I'm having a bit of a problem with the city, and you're talking about gray water systems, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Gray water systems work on large parcels of land. They do not work in very small lawns in rocky areas. I don't think they work very well because they empty right into the waterline trenches. In places where you have porous soil and or clays where the water would disappear fast, I think they're good. If you have a large lot where you can keep it away from the utility trenches, I think it's good. But using it in small areas, I personally think it's a bad plan because I don't want my guys digging basically in sewage. If you give a bath to your 2 little kids who've been fighting with their poop, that goes into your gray water system, and then if it flows into the utility trench, it's now surrounding your water lines. And I don't think that's a good plan. If there's a different way to do it, more than happy to listen. But we do not try to stay out of political items regarding landscaping and what the citizens want. It's not what Avion wants. It's what you guys want and want the city to do. And the course the city charts that we go with. We are not pushing one way or another. But I don't think that's the place to look at saving first of all. I think we can get there, but we need to look at xeriscaping and the bigger issues with surface water, which would increase the health and temperature flow into the Deschutes. But that's a tangled mess that people have been working on for decades. But yeah, I mean, I don't think gray waters is viable in our soil conditions. In some places, it's just going to disappear into the ground. In other places where it's solid rock, it's going to flow to where they've excavated, and that's the utility trenches. And I don't want my water lines or my guys having to work basically in sewage.
Yeah. we got this with our last mailing from Avion. It's when we're
Yep.
supposed to start doing our irrigation.
Uh-huh.
So the question is when you project, say these 2,000 new homes, and we just got, some big apartment complexes and stuff. So how does that affect our water pressure and the water pressure? Because I notice, like, if I try to use water, you know, in the yellow zone here, the pressure is down considerably. So how do
Yeah.
you work with that?
Build stuff as fast as we can. We are putting in new wells, pumps, reservoirs, as quick as we can. What those irrigation tables do is try to flatten the peak out to keep water pressure good for everyone all the time. In a perfect world, everyone would use staggered water and the water volume would be great, or pressure would be great. But what you have generally is irrigation systems coming on right when everyone's taking a shower. And as water moves faster through a pipe, the pressure decreases. So more water's flowing, but it's flowing at a lower pressure. We're trying to keep up. If you see large problems, call us and tell us. And we're trying to find solutions to what's coming up and keeping the backbone of the system delivering good water and water pressure to everyone. We have a new well coming online in the next week or 2 weeks out near Hame Hook and Butler Market. We have a big tank out there that serves a lot of the north end, and we should be able to pump more water into the mains to keep pressure stable. But it's upon us to make sure that your service doesn't decline. I mean, that isn't to say that there's going to be changes. It's always going to be changing, yeah, as long as people are building. But we try to make sure that it stays within a range that you guys find acceptable. Because happy people don't call their utility.
Right, right. And I haven't, I guess when I see the schools watering in the middle of the day and one of their sprinklers probably puts out more water than all of my sprinklers combined, I just, I just wonder if they're paying any
We-
attention to water.
We do, and we ask them to change when they water, but sometimes
Yeah.
they also maybe just watering or fertilized for the spring or something. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We try to keep people who have large items like that from not irrigating during peak demand. We try to limit pronghorn as much as they can because they take a ton of water to feed their golf courses because they try to keep them so immaculate, which is crazy, but well, I mean, we don't get a say in how they use their water. That's between the state of Oregon and the public. We follow the rules that are given to us, and we can't discriminate against a large water user versus a smaller water user. So we don't get a say in how we do that.
Mhm.
If you want to make changes, talk to our local representatives to do that. But it may be an uphill battle because it's been going on for decades.
Yes.
The interesting thing is you're going to see what happens to LA and Phoenix. Recently, I think it was in the past year and a half, Mexico won a lawsuit against the United States about the water level flowing into the estuary where the Colorado dumps out into the oh God, the Sea of Cortez, Baja Peninsula, and that's going to lower the water level in the Colorado that Phoenix and other cities can use.
Oh.
And I'm interested to see how those cities keep growing like they're growing because, I mean, dang, that's a lot of water and no water table.
That might be a good way to just say no more building, no more people. I mean,
Well, I mean, that's the reason that one of the reasons the Chinese built the Three Gorges Dam was because they have the least amount of groundwater available to their citizens in the world. Um, so they needed a source to get water, and that's why they flooded everything. Is they needed the water.
Mhm.
And South Africa, Cape Town almost ran. Oh, I'm missing questions, aren't I? When the city says only water before 9 or after 5, does that apply? No. The city's system is different than ours. We try and get close to what they want, but we try to be a little more relaxed during the daytime because people are generally at work and a moderately lower pressure doesn't affect them very much. But if you notice a difference, just don't irrigate during that time.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of this is in the control of individual homeowners on how the system operates. And we can only ask people to do so much because we're not the water police.
Mhm. Thank you for that.
Sure. Well,
Jason, could you talk a little bit about utility franchise fees? And we were outside of the city for, up until about 2000. And then, there was no such fees at that time. We had Avion Water, and then we were incorporated into the city, I don't know, 8 years later. There wasn't any utility franchise fees for another 10 years. And then just the last couple of years there has been. And obviously there was an agreement between Avion and the subdivision prior to the city. However, the city just seems to be able to usurp that agreement, and now we're paying the utility fees.
yeah. Avion has we have a very, very good agreement with the city in the fact that we are the only utility that has a franchise agreement with them that says they have to charge their customers the same amount as a franchise fee that they charge our customers. So when they levied that charge against Avion, which they can do because a franchise agreement with the city allows them to do that, but they had to charge their own customers, and they want that clause in the contract to go away very badly. And whenever they want anything from me, my stance on it is yeah, well, you get to extend my franchise agreement as is for the next 20 years, and we'll call it good. So they haven't taken me up on that yet. But yeah, we don't have any control of that, and it's just a straight pass through. So sorry about that. I mean, they charge all the other utilities a franchise fee. I think it's fair that they charge their customers what they make us charge you, because the city doesn't operate cable, gas, or any of the other utilities. However, they do operate a water utility. And having them charge their customers the same stuff that they charge us seems to me to be a equitable agreement. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, at least it'll probably be used for something good. So.
Well, we just pass it straight through. So again, that's a issue between you guys and the city. I mean, I can only do so much, and it's not a lot of that comes down to political issues between residents of the city and the city government that Avion shouldn't be involved in my viewpoint, because we shouldn't be voting for all of you guys. I mean, unless it's an issue that's clearly, I mean, something ridiculous that we would stand up against. But in general, we try to stay out of that because it's not between Avion and the city. It's between the residents of the city and the city government.
Well, I just want to say, I think you provide really good service. We're satisfied.
Well, thank you. We try to have someone answer the phones and have real human contact. We do all we can, but again, if you see areas you think we can improve, drop us a note. You can send me an email. The bulletin published my email, so it's jason@avionwater.com. It's pretty tricky. So if you need to send me a nasty gram someday, you can.
Does anyone else have any questions for Jason? If not, we will cut him loose. Thank you,
Okay.
Jason. It looks like we're not, okay. Last call.
Yeah, if you guys,
Meeting.
yeah, sure. And if you guys want to send me email questions, you can do that as well.
Okay, great. Well, we all love Avion Water. All of our guests here think it's the best water in the world, as do we. And
Well,
so
thank you.
thank you very much for running a great company.
Thanks. Well, we try and stay small town in a town that's getting pretty big.
Thanks. All right.
right.
Have a good evening. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.